Hey guys, I'm here with Max, and this is the first episode of my new series. And Max is Dominique's guitar teacher at Guitar Center. Is it Max Dible or Dible?
Dible.
Dible, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Oh, by the way, Dominique loves you.
I'm flattered.
I was like, Max is not going to teach forever. What if, he's not teaching anymore? She's like, I don't want to take lessons anymore. What? It's supposed to be about guitar. He's really good with kids, and you're very patient. You're also high energy, so.
Yes. I find that to be very important. I find it very, very challenging when people come in, and challenging to transmit information when people are just not mentally aware, or they're just caught in their day-to-day activity. So what I usually try to do is bring people kind of very present in the lessons. So I'm very, very aware of body language, eye movements, even just what you're looking at. So I try and pay attention to everything what's going on, because if your mind is stuck on the events of the day, you're not going to get the information in. And I constantly take tangents from the lessons. So I've got a whole slew of just terrible puns ready to go, because I have to be all G-rated, and so the puns are very, very poignant and
G-rated even with your adult students?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I condition myself to not even swear in the rooms in teaching. I mean, it's otherwise, you're going to slip.
You swear?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering about that.
I'm a musician.
Right.
In the lesson room, I have to definitely play the therapist at times, because if somebody's not focused, then there's no way there's going to be any form of information that's transmitted. That's one of the benefits of having one-on-one instruction as opposed to teaching in a group, because teaching in a group, you kind of have to.
It's interesting because you guys are stuck in this tiny room together, so it's very one-on-one.
Yes, and a lot of people even have claustrophobia. I'm sure you've probably heard that, if you paint the walls anything other than white, you are painfully aware of the boundaries of the room.
Right.
So the fact that the room is all dark in there, you become very aware of it. But once you sit down and you just become involved socially, then all of a sudden you stop paying attention to the boundaries of the room. It's great. Dominique is definitely making progress, and she definitely seems to be enjoying herself. We have a good time, and I think that's more important than making leaps and bounds in terms of progress, because in 30 minutes you can only really accomplish so much in 30 minutes. And
but you do cram a lot in 30 minutes.
Yes, absolutely, and being caffeinated definitely. This is me without caffeine. So really what it is, I have to maintain this energy level from noon until 9. And I can't have a lull.
Is that mentally draining though? Like
oddly enough, no. Sometimes once I decompress, but it's kind of like, if you have a lot of things to do and you're very busy, the last thing you want to do is sit down, because then all of a sudden you'll go through your routine of just relaxing. But otherwise, I am just definitely go until I pass out around like 3 a.m. And that's my normal schedule. So
say you have a new student, how long does it take to kind of get to know, their personality and how to go about teaching them?
I'll say the first thing that I do is I generally
observe.
I observe. I try to see how much they can focus at one given time, because someone really, I'll say from about 12 on up, has the capacity to focus like an adult, unless there's some kind of like developmental thing, whether it be ADD or Asperger's or something like this, or they just had a cup of coffee or something like this, which does happen every now and then. I definitely feel as though like some parents will run up to Starbucks, give them a Frappuccino, and then give the 5-year-old to me, and I'm like, you just gave me a blender with no lid. It's like, there's no way I'm gonna...
kid coffee.
Yeah. Which does happen, and I'm not here to pass any form of judgment in terms of parenting or otherwise. It's literally just, I have to work with this individual and however they're feeling right now. I was actually in a lesson, and I had a student come in, and he lost, it was $120,000 right then and there in the middle of the lesson. And there was no way he could focus, and I said, hey, look, we can just kind of hang and, and talk about whatever needs to be talked about. You can vent, you can try and come up with a plausible plan on the next step, but otherwise it's like, I'm here for you. How can I help you? And so I was like, you're more than welcome to go run and scream at the skies if you wish. That's kind of how I prefer to teach. I teach one-on-one, and I try and figure out the best way to get into someone's head.
Do you teach anywhere else, or is it just Guitar Center?
Just Guitar Center.
How long have you been teaching there?
The beginning of my 3rd year.
Okay.
Teaching there.
I actually started these lessons so that she could stop playing video games. Like to get her to focus on something else, because she loves music.
I mean, she actually got me to go and check out some of the video games that she's into. No. It's important to understand, what drives a person, and so if she's interested, and specifically it was a rhythm-oriented game, so her sense of rhythm is on point, and she gets to go and practice like other things like finger placement and worrying about the right notes and all this type of stuff. Everyone's going to come in with a different drive for it. Like I've got like 13, 14-year-old guys. It's like, I want to do it to go get girls. It's like, okay, fine, whatever your motives are. Great, never works out.
No, it doesn't.
Because it's practice. You have to invest that. I don't enjoy quoting Malcolm Gladwell, where it's your 10,000 hour rule, but otherwise it's like you gotta put in your time. When it comes to some of the older students, sometimes they literally just do it as a focus, so they can just not worry about the events of the day.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So it's a distraction. Sometimes it's to be a main focus. I have a couple students that have Asperger's, and it's like laser-like focus. They'll just go home and just knock out 6 to 8 hours of just playing a day. Yep, every day. And it's kind of interesting because you'll be really good at one skill and not necessarily very diversified. But everyone comes in with different wants and needs, whether they know it or not.
So what's your prep for? Is it different for each student?
For the most part, I have a curriculum, and then it branches off to
into their level of...
No, usually my first lessons that I teach them is Happy Birthday to You, unless there's something that pops up, and they'll do like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, something simple like this that everyone knows. And I think it's important to teach, because I have a small window, so it's going to be something that they've heard before, someplace along the lines. And once students develop certain tools, then some people want to go and learn heavy metal, some people want to go and learn folk music, and then some people want to do country music. And that's totally fine. I'm in no place to say my noise is better than someone else's noise. But at that point it's just like, here's the ingredients, and what combination of those ingredients can be put together to be a song that you've already heard before. So I kind of have to be a jukebox per se of various songs of like rock, and usually I do classic rock because everyone's been sick of it for 40 years. I don't care if you're like 15, you've been sick of it for 40 years. And
I don't like classic rock.
Yeah, and it's because we've grown up with it, we've heard it, we've overheard it, it's oversaturated. We're in Vegas right now, so it's definitely stuff that you'll hear on Fremont Street walking down. Every band that you pass, they're wearing the spandex and the wig, and they're outright singing those songs that were popular in 1982. But there's nothing wrong with it. It just happens to be those are the songs that you've heard. And every once in a while, someone will come in, even though I encourage everyone to come in and say, like, hey, look, I want to learn this one song. If someone doesn't do that, then look, I'm going to revert back to that. And we're just going to keep on doing that and build out your skills from there. And so far, that methodology, it's gone through a couple tweaks, but otherwise it's worked for me for, 28 years of teaching.
So how long have you been playing? Or did you start when you were a kid?
I started when I was 10, so I've been playing for 33 years. And so I've been teaching for 28. I started teaching when I was 15. So I'm dyslexic, so which translates to the traditional method of schooling failed me. It may work for other people, but it just didn't work out for me because everyone learns differently.
But they teach everyone the same in school.
They do. The curriculum is generally going to be the same. We've all had better teachers than others. And if a teacher is attentive to the needs of a student, then it won't necessarily even matter in terms of like the curriculum. Their delivery is going to be the thing that gets it stuck in their head. Like, I had a chemistry teacher in high school, and he was always doing things, literally, we're setting the floor on fire, or we accidentally set the ceiling on fire. Let's go out to the field and talking about potassium and magnesium and, blowing stuff up, lighting metal on fire and these type of things. So it's much more compelling than, say, a history class. But history is important to not repeat the mistakes of the past. And the way that history is usually taught, it's here's politics, okay? Which is not exactly everyone's favorite subject, as opposed to like when I was in college, my music history class. It was like drinking stories with famous composers, so
fun.
everything was so much more compelling. Don't get me wrong, like learning about Napoleon is absolutely great, but finding about how like Beethoven was pissed off at his girlfriend and wrote for Elise to be more difficult because she wouldn't accept him later on is so much more compelling. So how do you engage with your audience, your students, and how can you get them interested? So you have to be passionate about the topic that you're talking about.
Right.
So for me, since I'm dyslexic, I've had to go.
How does that work with music though? Like learning, yeah, is it like backwards?
So dyslexia is kind of an umbrella term for a set of symptoms, and for mine, the symptom is short-term memory retention.
So it's not like the letters reverse thing, or
every once in a blue moon. I mean, I remember hearing a quote once, and it said something along the lines of like, in Spanish, no one's dyslexic because everything is phonetic, as opposed to, you know, English, which is like a combination of all this bastardized bits of different languages, which makes it an interesting language. But otherwise, I mean, like I remember I was in junior high and remember everyone laughing at me because I went on the board and spelled OV because I spelled it phonetically, which is just goofy because, you know, it's like, all right, well, hey, phonetically it works, but you know, English is a terrible language.
Silent letters.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like the past tense of the word hold is holded. You know, you add ed as a suffix.
No one says that.
Yes, of course. But then you can have fun with it, and because the past tense of dive properly is dived, but people say dove, which is a bird. So, I mean, like, you know, we all have these preconceived notions of how English is supposed to be, but it's totally fine. However, English is a language, means that it's meant to communicate ideas and stuff like that. Once I kind of started figuring that out, I was like, oh, okay, well, I've had to go through all this different type of private schooling. So realistically, I had to go through various methodologies. The one that worked for me was something called Slingerland, where I would have to kinetically go and write out the words with, you know, in the air. It stops being a visual thing and then becomes a kinetic thing. Other than the fact that your arm gets tired from writing words out, it's just another methodology of getting it in there, and which translates to, all right, there's other ways of getting stuff into your brain. I'm sure we've all had that instance when we meet somebody new and you know, they say, hi, my name is blah, 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 and you're like, hello, I don't care enough to remember your name.
I never remember.
Yeah, it's just gone.
You and I seen it 3 times.
Yep, unless all of a sudden there's something emotionally engaging. And then all of a sudden, let's say it's somebody very attractive, you're like, hello, I better remember your name. Yeah, And then you get creepy and start overusing their name while talking to them, just so you can try and remember it. But it's just various tools, as you say, to like go and repeat something over and over and over again to help yourself to remember it. So for mine, short-term memory retention is definitely an issue. So I have to come up with other fun things. So in my teaching, I use mnemonics, which is a memorization tool. So yes, between using all sorts of like mnemonics, which help everyone. Even the people that stop taking lessons, they come back and it's, you know, like I shake the tree and they don't remember any of the details. They remember those mnemonics, which allow them to remember those details. So,
have you had students like take a break and then come back in like 6 months?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Do they usually remember the basics?
I'll say the education or the retained memories are fragmented. You wouldn't remember stuff from like 3rd grade detail-wise, but you'll remember that past tense of a word is ed. Things like that. So it's not exactly bullet points of things to remember. Like, I'll have students come in and they'll completely remember how to play songs and they're very proficient at it, but they'll forget the string names, which is kind of a day 1 activity. And I try and make sure everyone remembers happy birthday, because everyone has a birthday and you'll always be like called upon that, like, it's my birthday. You're a musician, do the thing, right? And so it becomes very, very interesting to see what still remains. But once I start dropping those like mnemonics, everyone remembers the things with that. I think it's because it pulls details off of semantics. So it just becomes like, hey, remember that one time you were on vacation, that one thing that you did? It's like, oh yeah, well yeah, that's your, you know, that's this chord or something like this, and it works for people.
Oh, you studied at Berklee?
Yes.
How was that?
Berklee College of Music, which is different than U.C. Berkeley.
Oh, it's different?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. One's
okay.
in California, U.C. Berkeley. Don't get me wrong, I have an interest in particle physics, but the music one is in Boston. It's like kind of like the second incarnation of the Schillinger School of Music. And I'll refrain from name dropping, but many people have gone there, and even prior to the college's founding, as Berklee, it was the Schillinger Institute, and like the Gershwin brothers went there, like Rhapsody in Blue, like way back, like the early 1900s. They went there to further their education. And so the methodologies that they use have changed over the years, but otherwise, Berklee College of Music, when I went, obviously it's still there, but I'm sure things are different because it's been so long since I've been a student there. The music education was very, very nice. I was a bit put off, back to me being dyslexic, I did not progress in a group setting. So what happened is, I became really good at doing things by myself. So I was really good at skateboarding because, you know what, if I messed up, that's my fault.
Right.
And I got really good at doing martial arts because if I don't block a punch, I get immediate feedback. And so, okay, fine, so I can go and, you know, tailor up my practice accordingly so I don't get hit in the face. And luckily my mother was very, very, very patient with me. And so she put me in lessons, and everything went fine roughly until I was about 12, roughly around junior high. And so what happened is I just became hungry for information. I was reading through magazines. All right, you know, as a parent, your dyslexic child is suddenly showing an interest in reading. So my mother would never say no to a book. Sometimes we had to like ease it back a bit, and you're like, hey mom, I want all these college textbooks. And college textbooks are obviously expensive. It's like you get one. And so I remember going through getting books, and I just became a sponge. But the problem was I didn't have any like
Books on what?
Music, just music in general. I didn't have any curriculum. I didn't have any guidance. So topically, I was just everywhere. So
and there was no internet back then.
Yes.
You kids are lucky now.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But in terms of individual expression, everyone kind of like ends up like homogenous because everyone is getting exposed to exactly the same information and putting emphasis on the same information rather than focusing on developing a unique sound of their own. But if that's what you want to do, that's, you know, more power to you. But for me, I was just like, you know, I have to focus on guitar, and then I have to like, okay, well, there's music theory, and so it's traditional music theory, which is studying like classical music. And then, okay, well, I'm also noticing this new type of music theory, which is kind of more contemporary stuff. Contemporary in terms of music theory is jazz. And then, you know, okay, fine, well, there's this arranging stuff, and okay, well, I have to like conduct music, then there's this ear training, I have to listen to it and be able to play it. Oh, I have to sing it now, and then I have to write it down on top of everything else. And so when I got into college, I had such a diverse field of, I don't know what I need to know, so I better know it all.
That's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily, but it certainly made me an expert in very strange things. I mean, like I was studying like Anka music, which is like folk music of Japanese fishermen, because I just thought it was really cool. When I have to go and study the music from like 1700s, just like, all right, you know, that just ebb and flow with my interests, even though like, okay, well, you know, I'm told enough that this thing is important, so I should probably know about it. So it was very interesting because I'm like primarily a pop rock and heavy metal guitarist, and I knew more about like jazz and classical music than any of my peers. So I get in there, and it's just completely useless information at that point. But it's kind of cool to intellectualize. And
It was 4 years. It was 4 years.
Yes. So I have a degree in classical composition, and when I got into college, I placed
Classical.
I got placed at 5th semester because of just my knowledge in general. They placed me in upper level classes, and I wasn't patting myself on the back. I legitimately wanted to go there and just like start at the bottom. Like, I don't know anything, you know, start me out. And instead they're like, you're in the middle, and like, I want the ceiling to be higher. And so I became friends with my teachers in terms of my guitar proficiency. I had enough technical proficiency there to be better than most of the instructors. It's not a pat on the back. It's like, you know, just because you can run from A to B fast, you know, let's say you need a dump truck, but you have a Ferrari. It's like you can go from A to B real quick, but you're not very useful. Yeah, Berklee was definitely an interesting experience, and it's definitely good to have guidance to help you identify your wants and needs so you can go and take action to meet those needs. And a lot of times people just don't even know what they want. So this is my job to expose people to new things and say like, hey, look, you know, this is pretty cool. Do you want to do that? And if not, yeah, we can do this other thing. Check out this other thing. We can move forward.
Were you teaching when you were in the college?
Yes, actually. Yes, I was teaching the other students.
That's great.
I was like, people would pay me to do their homework type stuff. I was tutoring outside, yeah.
And then after that, you went back to the Bay Area?
So my education process was interesting. So I didn't actually finish high school on time. Back to that whole dyslexia thing. After my class graduated, I went to summer school, and I still didn't graduate. But I had my California proficiency, which I think I got when I was like 14 or 15. Then I got my GED. And so I got into college with my GED. So I went to college without finishing high school. And then I think during that summer...
Were you like 17?
Oh, no. So I went to college when I was 18, and then I came back during the summer to go and finish high school because I was like, I only had like a course left. And then I came back and I stayed in the Bay Area, and I started taking classes over at the local community college because paying for a private college to have a musician teach English who doesn't want to teach English to a bunch of students that don't want to learn English is going to compromise my education. So I took some classes over at the local community college as a resident in California, and then I went back to Boston, and then for whatever reason I kept bouncing back and forth between Boston and California, and it wasn't, I definitely was not on track. I wrapped it up, and now I think there was like something like 7 people in my graduating class for the same degree, for the same major that I had, because who wants classical music? I'm a pop, the joke that I say is I'm a pop rock and heavy metal guitarist because no one...
What are the other majors? Oh, sorry,
it's fine. The other majors happen to be, let's see here, there's jazz composition, they just called the classical composition, or at least they did. There's music education, there's MP&E, which stands for music production and engineering. You can think of like those pictures of the guys sitting behind all the mixing boards and stuff like that. Let's see here, there's music technology, which is kind of like designing sounds and things like this. There's film scoring, which places an emphasis on technology, or at least it did place an emphasis on technology, as opposed to like, you want to write music like Star Wars, right? Well, guess what? You're going to have to learn how to use all the technology. Yeah, that's great if you want to write, so you'll take composition classes up to a point, and then you have to learn about the scoring process for film. And you have performance, which is playing your instrument. And then the other one that I recall is they call it professional music, which is just kind of a grab bag. So what it is that whatever interests you in terms of...
That's interesting.
Yep. So if you want to play...
You don't want to do that?
No, I legitimately had an interest in classical composition because I excelled at music theory. And so book stuff, I love that. I couldn't get enough of it. And a lot of people are like usually daunted by music theory. It's like there is an end. There is a bottom to that seemingly bottomless hole, but it's just a very deep hole. But otherwise, yes, there's a standardized curriculum, and it does eventually end, even with your PhD.
PhD in music.
Yep, music composition.
I don't know anyone with that.
There's like a PhD in reading, if you can believe that. There's double majors where it's a 5-year program. But that's what I recall. Oh, there's an arranging major. That's an interesting one. It's kind of like taking existing songs and how do you blow them up. So for different ensembles and different styles and all that type of stuff, as opposed to classical stuff where it's orchestration, where it's like you get to compose something and then you get to write out for whatever ensemble you feel like.
What made you come to Vegas, move to Vegas?
So I ended up as a personal assistant to founder of a record company.
In California or
yes,
here?
California,
okay.
Yes. So throughout college, I listened to instrumental rock guitar stuff, and most of those artists happened to be on a record label by the name of Shrapnel Records. There's a trade show that happens every year in Anaheim in late January. It's called the NAMM Show. It stands for National Association of Music Merchants. And music industries, like companies, will come out and release their new models for the year, and they'll have the artists that will come and show off those new things. Just wandering around there, I ended up bumping into a couple artists, and so as a musician, the thing that you have to do, kind of like this is just the thing to do, is you transcribe music. So you listen to it and write it down. I didn't realize this, but that's kind of a very rare thing with non-jazz musicians. The person that I ran into, I was like, oh my god, hey, you're the drummer guy that I've got transcriptions of your stuff. Would you be willing to check it out? And he was really excited. He's like, oh my god, you went to Berklee. I went to Berklee too. And I was, oh, wow, okay. So he went in the 70s, I went in the 90s. And so gave him my demo tape, and he took a look at my transcriptions. He was really excited, and he says, hey, you should come up to San Francisco. And so I ended up going and meeting with him, some other people, and then, hey, you should come with us to Vegas to go see the show, and we'll go and hang out. I think it was the first time I went to Vegas as an adult.
Oh.
And I'm not really a party person. So I'm like, okay, fine.
And you're in that industry, you're not a party person.
Yeah. And you'll find that the higher functioning musicians are not party people. They'll play their show and even pack up and leave. As opposed to like if you're in like high school and like college, it's like, come on man, stay afterwards and watch our band. You just played. As opposed to, no, I got a breakdown. I got 2 to 3 hours worth of stuff that needs to be done afterward. And then I met the founder of this record label that most of my influence of the guitar musicians would be on. So I developed a relationship with him and had an interest in me and one of the other people that I was working with. And right as things were getting good on that, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, my father abandoned her, and so I was like, all right, I'm taking care of mom. Everyone's like, you're doing the right thing. I was like, well, wouldn't you guys do the right thing? Wouldn't you do that as well?
In California?
Yes, but I was in Boston.
Oh.
Actually, wrapped up that project thing, and I went back to Boston to go to Harvard for my master's and PhD.
Oh.
In composition. At that point, my mother said, like, come on home. And I said, all right, fine. So I came back to California and started taking care of her. So everything got put on pause. I had already established a relationship. And once my mother ultimately passed, I ended up moving up to Northern California, try to shake off all the depression and all the grief. And so from that point forward, started helping out this gentleman. And he said, hey, look, why don't you just stay up here for multiple days out of the week. And so,
here?
No, this is in Nevada. So I was living in San Jose, and then I was working in north of the bridge, and
so much traffic there. I don't miss that.
And it just happened to be that just because I had been soaking in all of these different artists and all these song names and names that were just floating around, I ended up knowing all the players, and then I ended up knowing all the people that are like kind of behind the scenes. So like I was familiar with the studios that they would go to. I was familiar with the engineers that they would go to. I was familiar with even the office manager, like the distribution guys. Like I knew all their names just from reading all the stuff that came along with CDs. And so I knew all those people, and then immediately I'm just in that world. I'm working with them and taking care of all this. He just said, hey, I'm moving to Vegas. You want to just come with me? Because I wasn't married, no kids. And it's like, fine, sure. What have I got to lose here?
How do you like it here? It's a lot different.
Very different. Yeah, it's there's more live music here than anywhere I've ever even heard of. It's actually changed. A lot of people are like going the route of just having like backing tracks and like DJs and this type of stuff. So the live music is slowly starting to tail off. Things are changing, but there's definitely a lot of absolutely fantastic musicians here. I've heard a recent quote, and it's like, Las Vegas is where great musicians go to die. And
or start a cover band.
Hey, but the fun thing is, like, they also have their original bands. One of my favorite bands is called Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, and they play every Monday night. They're a 16-piece band, and like most of the members are like musical directors for the shows out on the strip. So the musicians get to go and flex, and you're listening to a bunch of musicians play musician stuff when you've heard your third trombone solo on a Lionel Richie song. It's kind of like, all right, you're doing your thing, and it's cool. And it's great to listen to people do something that they're very passionate about. And when was the last time you got to hear a Lionel Richie song played by an actual band? So
never. What instruments do you play?
I have to think of it, visualize the arrangement of rhythm section. So, drums, bass, piano, guitar, vocals, mandolin, banjo, ukulele. Guitar is my primary instrument.
Are you, or have you been in bands?
I have been in many bands. Oddly enough, I've never had my own band that plays my own music. Kind of. I've put together cover bands where you go play copy songs, and
Do you have any interest in your own?
Yes and no. Most people don't quite realize, they just think of it as this like loud device for self-expression, as opposed to it really ends up being, you have to equate in, you need to have the gear, which is going to be thousands of dollars, and then you're going to have to deal with renting a rehearsal spot or finding a rehearsal spot, someplace that you can come make noise with, making sure that the place is secure so you can leave your instruments, your amplifiers, and all the extra accoutrements.
A vehicle too.
A vehicle that goes with it, and then you get to worry about all the time, because it's not just like, yeah, we're going to have an hour of rehearsal. It's like, yeah, you're going to have an hour of loading equipment in, driving there, rehearsing, and learning new songs and or rehearsing old songs, and then you have to come back home and break things down. It can be overwhelming, the amount of material that a practicing musician has to deal with. So, have I been in bands? Yes. To say, even if you're not in a band, you're not doing music-related activities, that's just a misnomer. Like, even right now, it's like, I get to deal with contracts because I work for a record company, and I own my own custom music transcription company, so I get to listen to music and write it all down. And every once in a while, something like, if I have enough students request a song, then I'll go through and transcribe it. So that's something that I get to do recreationally. Just listen to the music and write it down.
Can you explain what transcribing is? Because I had no idea.
Okay, very similar to a court transcriptionist. You're going to listen to something and write it down, even though the traditional definition of musical transcribing is taking an existing piece of music and putting it to a different instrument. So you're listening to something and doing the notes, right? Yes.
The lyrics too? Or just...
It totally depends.
Okay.
It totally depends. Most of the time, as a guitar instructor, I don't really pay so much attention to the lyrics.
My YouTube recommendations, I was recommended the Linkin Park concert, and then Chris Cornell came on, and I hadn't seen that in a while. And it's eerie, right? Because they both... So is there a correlation between musicians and depression? I mean, it's an artist thing, like actors, Robin Williams and stuff, but like, there's a lot of musicians that commit suicide.
Yes.
Why? Is there something about it? Because I'm not a musician, so I don't understand.
For the most part, it's gonna almost be different for everyone's personal type of suffering, if you will. Music is a deeply personal thing, but it can be very public. And the fact that And it oddly ends up being incredibly hypocritical. Like, oh, I'm so alone, but I'm going to share it with the world. This type of thing. I'm so depressed, no one loves me, even though you have millions of fans telling you how much they love you.
Does that make them feel more isolated?
I'll say it boils down to how much you drink your own Kool-Aid. So how great are you? And, your ego.
How great are you?
Yeah, how great you think you are.
Okay.
And it's really important for artists to actually have somebody to manage their social media pages, because they may get hundreds of thousands of "you're the greatest thing in the world."
But that one nasty comment.
One nasty comment will just wreck you, and it's based around your insecurities and how well are your emotional needs met. And most people don't go through this type of introspective moments to identify what it is.
But a lot of these guys are married, they have 5 kids, and they still do it.
Yeah, that's because that's kind of what society says they're supposed to do.
It's not cool.
No, it's not cool, because these people end up, their art, not these people, but their art ends up, their sense of self-expression ends up influencing people in various ways. And, we think of them as being, this force for change type of positive thing, but, maybe their self-expression is them working through some personal demons, and we just can relate to it momentarily. But that's what they get to live all the time. And so a lot of people revert to, they just can't manage their emotional states, so they revert to, using, and then eventually it becomes abusing things just to manage their emotional state. I mean, very similar to how Michael Jackson and Prince and Tom Petty, it's pain management. It's it's not that these people started out going oh man, this is the best thing ever. It's just, hey, look, this helps out a little bit, and then okay, well, now all of a sudden, something's out of hand. Also, that anxiety of stepping on stage, it's very, very common for musicians to have a drink before going on stage to cut down on that anxiety, to allow them to be able to focus on what it is that they do. I, on the other hand, I think because I'm an instructor, it's I'm constantly put on the spot when it comes to emotional management. I've gone through, I'm introspective enough to realize okay, hey, look, hey, I'm nervous now. Why am I nervous? Because this thing that's later, and it's well, I have to kind of go, well, it doesn't matter in this given situation right now. So I'm very even keel. I don't have this red light kind of syndrome. It's okay, it's recording now, and I'm nervous. I'm not that person. And it was funny actually that one of the last bands I was in Boston, we were a heavy metal band, and I swear every time we would go on, it was 10 or 11 p.m. and it's the end of your long day. And so I was just always just so, I was just void of any form of emotion. So I would go to Starbucks and just pound down, a large coffee. And, once that caffeine metabolizes, which is like about 3 minutes to metabolize, I'm like, all right, woo, we're good to go, let's go. No, really, let's go. Let's finish the set before I have to go to the bathroom. Like, we have to go and hurry up. And so all of a sudden, I had lots of energy. And so I was completely opposite, as opposed to most people, they want to cut down on those nerves. And I thrive off of that. Some people just can't manage those emotional states.
Do you think it's more the introverted artists who
No, it's totally across the board. Like, actually, the biggest drug addicts that I've ever met are absolutely the best musicians that I've ever known, because they're combating their depression. They're on antidepressants, they're alcohol, everyone has their choice libation.
What's yours?
Coffee. Yeah.
Me too.
Actually, they're classical musicians, because everyone's like popping pills because it's all anti-anxiety and stuff. Which makes no sense. It's like you're going to be playing Beethoven. You're a classical musician, you're in your late 50s. You've been playing this piece of music since you're like 4. You could play it with your eyes closed, but you just have anxiety of being in front of like people. It's like, oh my God, they're watching me. It's like, you're in the violin section, though, and you and 25 other violins. It's like, so it's like, you drink your own Kool-Aid. You get caught up in your own head. You have your own anxieties, and you have your own depression. In terms of depression, like, I remember reading something. It was like, depression is technically, it's just anxiety, but you're reminiscing about the past. You're thinking negative things of the past, and anxiety is thinking negatively of the future.
Why don't you do teaching videos on YouTube? I know you're interactive, but still, you could do that on the side.
The reason why I'm not posting stuff up on YouTube primarily is because if you teach someone else's material,
well, the copyright?
Copyright laws, even when it comes down to fair use in terms of instruction. Yes. So
really? They're going to strike you for that? No, because people make money off the ads for covers, though.
Yes, they do. And YouTube flags all sorts of things. And this is a thing with a lot of instructors on YouTube. They have not secured those rights, the mechanical rights, because there are
there's still ads running on there.
Yes, I know. And the algorithm is flawed. So when it comes down to like the legal aspect of stuff, people are like just all over the place, just outright abusing the system. And it's one thing if it's one-on-one, and the laws pertaining to it is like, I can't legally show you an entire song. I can show you parts of a song. Like, you can use a song, but only a very small, like, I forget what it is. It's like 3 seconds of a song, as is.
No, but you're not going to play the whole song in your video. You're going to play the whole song.
Teach the song.
Yeah.
So.
But you're not playing the actual song, so.
It's still, that would be not the license for the piece, it would be the mechanical license. So even if I put a title on, like, I'm playing Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll, since I'm teaching it publicly, then all of a sudden it constitutes a public performance. I'm profiting off of it, therefore I need to have like securing a license for live performance. Same thing.
I don't think so. Really?
Yep. When it comes to specifically teaching, just teaching, that's a whole different thing. For example, if I show you a song that contains the C chord, a G, C, and D, right? There's so many songs that use those ingredients. So, hey, look, you can go check out these songs. These songs contain G, C, and D. That's all you. This is one of the joys of being able to go teach privately. I'm like, yeah, here's this one thing, and here are all these parts. I'm not saying like I'm a stickler for that type of like okay, everything has to be done by the book kind of thing, but for me, I'm more interested in accuracy when it comes to an instructor. And there are many people on YouTube that outright just show things incorrectly, and it kind of blows my mind. It's like...
That's why I was like, you should do it.
Yes, and when you go about it on a different platform, for example, as an artist, now, it's kind of sad, but here's how it works. Let's say so you're an instrumentalist. Say you play piano. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to market yourself, your personal brand that also happens to play in a band. Okay, so you get to market the band, you get to market yourself. Then on top of this, what you get to do is you get to market your own personal music and your own personal skill set at piano. And then on top of this, welcome to Internet 2.0, where all social media is commerce related. So on top of that, you get to also ad revenue. Yay! Then you get to worry about your apparel. Do you have your affiliate market?
Sponsorships.
Yep, your sponsorships, your affiliates. You get to worry about your print-on-demand stuff,
so
your
you don't want to do all that?
No, it's not a question of that. It all takes time and effort.
Oh, right.
And it's it's all a time sink, and it is an investment of capital. So you have to have one thing before you can get the next step responsibly. You can get a credit card and throw yourself into debt and have no audience to purchase any of your material. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing to start at any time. And yes, I do have YouTube content up.
I saw some. You're eating Oreos or something.
Yes, which is awesome. I recommend that for everyone. But the big thing is, like, I don't have anything to promote. And so I am not going to do this until I kind of have, like, hey, look, here's some products. Hey, look, here is me as a personal brand. Because right now, I'm not doing anything to promote myself as a personal brand. I'm also a big advocate of planning stuff out. It's interesting when it comes to social media because it's like, the pretty face will only attract so much. Mm-hmm. Your body will only attract so much. You just have to ebb and flow with, the trends. And if you still want to be relevant, you have to move with it. I mean, I think Gary Vaynerchuk had a really good point. He was saying, you have to be aware of your platform's limitations. For example, you may be driving down the street and see a billboard that says Coca-Cola, drink Coke. It's like, that makes sense. But if you're watching television, you're not going to see a 30-second ad that just says drink Coke, and not move. So you have to be aware of the strengths and limitations of your platform. And unfortunately, other than me going, I'm drinking coffee right now, there's not a whole lot of real push behind it. For me, at least incentive, because I'm not looking to play in a band right now. I'm not looking to take on any more work as a transcriber. I'm not looking...
That's what I'm saying. If you started, just do one video, and, then you can start advertising yourself. And your personality is going to be why people are watching.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on social media? You kind of already answered that, right? Because we didn't have that growing up. We're around the same age. Still
a type of media, and media can be lumped into three things. You have information, you have commerce, entertainment. So really what it is that's kind of it. Each one has its own means to go and, educate.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's how you use it. Absolutely. How you use your own.
And it definitely creates a type of division. And the last thing you really need in any form of social context is any form of division.
So are you for it or against it?
Oh, I'm 100%. Any form of media, I'm 100% for. As long as there's truthfulness in advertising.
What advice do you have for beginning musicians?
The advice I'd say for beginning musicians is have, and if you don't have, create goals for yourself. Because otherwise it's just, you're going to learn some songs. And make a list of songs that you want to learn because that makes everything goal-oriented. And use your ignorance as a tool for growth. I don't know...
Brilliant.
I don't know the chords for that song. So you're going to have to use... I don't know. Congratulations, it's good that you know that you don't know, because now you can take steps to solve that problem. So now you have to go and learn that, so then you know. And so then you can move forward and play with that song. And things will come along later, and it's funny because you'll think that you'll totally have something down, and then later on you'll be like, wait, oh, there's something oh man, I learned that wrong. And so you have to constantly come back because your ears will refine, your sense of rhythm will refine, your vocabulary will be more refined. And so you can definitely be very driven, it sounds terrible, but admit that you don't know something and then find out.
That applies to everything.
Yes, of course. And most people, we have our egos, and egos are just based off of our prior achievements. So, you get to pat yourself on the back for taking 2 steps. But don't give up. Use your own ignorance, not as a crutch in the sense that, oh, no, I'm fine.
As a fire.
Yeah, use it to, get hungry and go tear forth and start consuming more things because, who knows, maybe you're tired of listening to stuff on the radio because you've already heard it. It's bubblegum stuff. It's, quick, meant to be kind of fun, and then it's done, and then it's on to the next song, and there's only so many of those. And hey, why not listen to pop music from, the 90s, the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s? What is pop music from the 40s? Who was the first pop star? Who was the first pop star?
I don't know.
Frank Sinatra.
Pop?
Yep.
Really? No.
All those touring big bands, yeah, World War II kind of came along, and all those bands all the band members got to go off to war. So instead of having an entire big band that would tour, musical director would show up 2 weeks before, and then Sinatra would come in to the city, and then he'd go and sing. So you'd be playing with Frank Sinatra did not have a band until later on, but otherwise it was just...
Not in the 50s?
Yep. 50s into the 60s. But otherwise, he would just fly in, he'd do his crooning thing, and then move on. So it was no longer like, man, Count Basie and his band. It's like, man, that third trumpet player, man, he's on point. No, it's just Frank Sinatra. Experience. Lounge singers were fundamentally, they would come out and they'd play with the piano player because all the horn players had to give their lips a break because they're playing on metal. And honestly, they're just all at the bar. But otherwise, they're still taking a break. So that's where the lounge singer thing popped up. But that was the singers in jazz. And Frank Sinatra, he was the first guy. Hit some weird ethnomusicology type thing. Like, go check out Bulgarian wedding music. It's totally an awesome thing. No, it's totally awesome.
Yeah, I listen to it every day.
Yeah, throw it on road trips. Go listen to some klezmer music. Go check out some classical music. I mean, like, we think of popular music as like, from the 50s onward. It's like, all right, fine. So we've got like, what, 80 years worth of stuff. All right, yeah, well, Western music as a tradition is like, goes back to 900 AD. Like, there's some cool stuff that's like, that was written back then. Definitely not by any standards modern popular music. You can definitely tell it's music. And it might not exactly be someone's cup of tea, but go check it out.
So, are you done learning because you've had so much experience, or are you constantly?
No, there's so much stuff, and like I analyze things constantly. Learning never stops, and even then, it's like once you get the chip on your shoulder, the pridefulness of like, I've learned it all. Yeah, congratulations, you failed, and so it's like just constantly grow.
Well, everyone can learn music or an instrument, but do you think that there's something that needs to be within to progress? Because I took piano lessons, my mom forced me, and I have no musical interest. Zero. And my teacher was the crypt keeper, and he was like, I thought he was going to hit me with a stick or something. So 6 months I was done.
Yeah.
I had nothing inside me to learn anymore.
Yes.
Do you think that you need that inside you?
I'll say no.
You don't?
There's two sides of that. There's the nurture versus nature argument. I become marginally offended when people describe something as talent. It's like, no, hard work will always beat out whatever genetic things. I don't care if you're like 4'11". If you practice your 10,000 hours and there's somebody who's 7'2", you're going to be a better basketball player than they are, regardless of whatever genetic things they may have. Just put in time. I'm not talking about interest. If you just put in time, you will become better at something. Whether it be 4 hours a day of practicing violin because your parents stood over you with a ruler every single night to make sure that you practiced. Yeah, you're gonna get better at violin. Substitute it for the gym. If somebody stood over you with a stick for 4 hours a day at the gym, you're gonna have results.
Not an inherent talent. It's like you don't need a talent for it.
Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah, it's literally just hard work. I mean, like, the notion that there's like some genetic gift, you're so gifted at computer programming. It's like, well, no, that's not a genetic trait. Like, computers are not like inherent for like millions of generations for us to adapt. It's literally just like, okay, well, here's another thing. Like, well, do you have the skill set and mental acuity and interest to go and invest the time to become proficient at that thing? So can you get better at it? Yes. Can you do something and not have interest? Yes. Like, you're a parent. I'm sure there are times when you're like, I don't want to parent right now. Yes. But you have to. And so you know that the end result is more important than how you feel, which means that it's in your best interest, to go and parent at that given moment. And it's rewarding in the end. Sometimes it's not, but you still have to do it. So it's kind of like, yeah, you gotta practice, okay, because that's where you want to go. It's kind of like after my concussion, I couldn't hold an instrument. I still had to force myself to play, even if it was painful. It wasn't like I'm working through the pain. I still had to listen to my body, but it's like, all right, I can't let this injury cause my skill set to atrophy. And so it's just like, all right, get back on the horse. Knocks you up, get back on it. If that's what you're interested in. So this is one of the reasons why I try to keep things in the lessons very playful, even if it's not super productive. It's like, cool, you have an interest. Like, most of the people don't do anything on their own. They come back and they do stuff in the lesson. Fine. As long as you're like mentally attentive and having fun, you will make progress. And for me, in terms of learning experience, having fun is more important than sitting down with a book and having someone stand over you with a stick. Progress can still be made with, the old donkey thing. It's like, you can get the thing to move with a carrot, or you can get it to move with a stick. The challenge is swapping out the carrot. How do you constantly keep that enthusiasm going? So that's my views on practicing. in terms of progress. Have a goal, and you have to become
You
excited.
don't need to be talented.
No.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Hopefully having diversified my skill set. In this day and age, just the way that capitalism and the economy currently is, there's no way that even if you end up saving 10% of your income, we're gonna live into our hundreds. Like in terms of like our 40 years worth of work from age 20 to age 60, there's no way, like financially, even if we save 20%, we're gonna be able to continue living off of our savings. If you just did that, you'd live like 5 years. I think even like Teddy Roosevelt, like his pension, like he didn't even live long enough to collect, because he's the first person that set that up. There's no way that you're gonna fundamentally be able to live well into your hundreds and still have any money. Like you won't be able to physically work. You're just not gonna have any money coming in. So really, it's a question of like, all right, well, fine. What type of stuff can you create? What type of things can you create and you can use, for me at least, in terms of using the music stuff to set up other forms of investments. Even if education is still very, very prevalent, like just have products that like are still available to be purchased, even like, oh man, I broke my hand, but good thing I released that thing yesterday. So people can still be interested in your art, can still be interested in you as a brand. As long as you're still alive, there's still gonna be a demographic that's interested in you. So really, it boils down to like, how can you invest? Now, I don't necessarily mean stock market, it could be any form of investment. Real estate, I mean, those two are like very on the forefront of people's mind when it comes to investment. But otherwise, yeah, like how can you have money continuing to come in? Be like Warren Buffett, If you're not making money when you're sleeping, you're gonna die broke. So it's just a question of like, will I be able to diversify my investments enough so I can have enough money coming in, so I can continue doing what it is that I enjoy doing when I can no longer do that thing. So it's kind of weird because like I can play guitar without an instrument now. That's where my skill set is in terms of that level. It's like I don't necessarily need to have it in my hand. Arthritis will roll around. Skill sets. Your body will deteriorate, and
So invest for the future.
Yeah, fundamentally, yeah, and just create more stuff. I mean, one of my shortcomings is that I've always been like the session guy. I've always been the side guy rather than being like the forefront. And so I've made my living doing that, and I enjoy that. But when it comes to investment purposes, like being a side person is not going to continually give you incrementally larger returns on what you've invested in. So it's just a question of, well, what can I do? As I said, back to the social media stuff, like you are a brand, you have to sell your merch, you get to sell all this type of stuff. Even though like the larger rock bands now, they're so divested. They're like, we start our own companies just so they can continue having more things to sell. They can just make more money now. It's not the days of where you go on tour and you make millions of dollars because somebody just threw a contract in front of you. Actually, Kiss, they made the vast majority of their money based off of merch. Yeah, actually action figures.
There's
and
so
lunchboxes.
much of it.
Yeah. And Gene Simmons is a great businessman. He's done quite well for himself based off of his business acumen. Any other questions?
Lightning round. Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
Pizza or pasta? I had to throw a dumb one in there.
No, that's a hard one. That's the hard one. Yeah.
Like you cannot have the other one for the rest of your life.
No, well, keep in mind that the third option would be grilled cheese sandwich with tomato soup, because they're all kind of real similar. I'm gonna probably say, okay, like we're talking about like pasta with cheese on it too. So
whatever kind of pasta.
I'm probably gonna go with pizza. I like my New York style. Yeah, the pizza. Yeah, you get to fold it up like a taco.
I don't understand people that fold their pizza.
You have to get like a legit New York style pizza.
Oh, okay.
Like you'll see.
It becomes a sandwich.
It's the New York style is super, super thin.
But still, it's like, why are you folding it?
You won't be able to like.
The fun part is going like this.
Yes, that's the other option.
Yeah.
That's the other. Yeah. Oh, but you totally can't. You can't use a fork and knife to eat New York style.
Oh no.
Like, you can't do that.
That's weird. Okay. You said pizza. Guns N' Roses or Metallica? Back in the day, not now.
So I actually started playing guitar because of Guns N' Roses.
Nice.
Oh, no, I'm gonna take it back. I started playing guitar. I started becoming interested in music because of Michael Jackson, specifically "Beat It," which ended up being. There's two guitarists on that track. One is Steve Lukather, who was the guitarist of Toto, and then the solo was by Eddie Van Halen. And so that got me interested in guitar. And then the first songs that I started learning were from Guns N' Roses. But I think like in terms of like overall, I'll say Metallica, because Metallica, like, even though they've had ups and downs, they look like just a fun group of people, as opposed to like
the drama.
Guns N' Roses, which is just like ego versus clashing with ego. You could literally go to like a car show in Northern California and run into some of the guys from Metallica. You could like
nice guys.
Yeah, as opposed to like Guns N' Roses, where it's like, all right, there's like how many different members that have come and gone, and some of my friends have actually ended up in Guns N' Roses band. And it's just, it's very much like a corporate face. Like, yeah, cool, okay, you know, like, do you fit the look? Okay, you're good, here, go play your parts. There you go. And it's just different. Heavy metal is much more inclusive than popular music. Popular music is very exclusive. I think it's an embodiment of some type of aggression, and you definitely need to have skill to be able to play it. Playing popular music, you definitely need to have skill. You don't need to have as much skill. You have to play the parts in a heavy metal song meticulously. Like there's no wiggle room. So yeah, I'll say Metallica. That's a way longer answer.
Oh. Swim or fly?
Swim or fly.
Not sumo.
I was like, I don't know that word. Swim or fly?
Yes.
I'll say swim.
Swim?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
My brain immediately goes to more practical things. Like, okay, if you're flying, there's less things floating in the air, and you have to go on the ground and eat. As opposed to like being in the ocean where there's just everything all over all the time.
Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert with enough self-confidence that I can go out. Extroverted introvert.
But you're so good with people.
Yep. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to like find me like, oh man, I got to go to the club. I'm not one of these people that needs to have their ego stroked based off the adoration of like other people. I don't need that type of validation. I feel confident in my abilities, and I'm aware of my shortcomings, and you know, like, haha, you're da-da-da-da-da. Like, well, yeah. Okay, so, you know, I don't need this type of outward type of expression to be able to build my self-confidence. Like, you know, you drop me in the mountain range.
Could you live alone, though? Like, and not talk to people for a year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you don't crave, it's not like I'm saying you crave attention, but just the interaction?
No, I enjoy interacting with people.
But do you need it?
Not for self-validation. I know people that, you know, man, like, I have to be in a crowd, I have to be, you know, talking to somebody, I have to be...
That's weird, I don't get it.
And for me, it's like, all right, fine, you know, I'm totally content. Give me drop me off at a coffee shop and give me a book. And, you know, people watching is great. I like that. Camping is great by myself. Hiking, I'm totally fine with all of that. I know it seems weird, you know, just me talking, but like, I don't need to be running my mouth all the time, even though that's my job. So I know when to have that extrovert and when to have the introverted side of me.
Love or knowledge?
Love as a hormonal function as well as an emotional thing. It's based off of, you know, familiarity. It's based off of having someone help meet those emotional needs. And if you didn't know that, chances are you're not aware of what you need to have happen in your life for you to feel loved. So knowledge is really important. From intellectualizing to emotions, it's like you can't control your emotions with pure intellect. Like you can't rationalize with someone when they're in like super angry. It's like, I'm not yelling. It's like, okay. Or try to rationalize with somebody who's drunk. It's like they're just operating off of like, you know, and a sheer id. You know, it's like a 2-year-old's id, just raw emotion, and you can't intellectualize it. But what you can do is you can use your intellect to like guide it. And so I think knowledge is power, and I'm definitely an advocate of educating yourself in terms of at least functional level of psychology. You know, granted, that's a very large field, but being able to use some form of psychology practically, especially when it comes to like managing yourself and trying to manage others. Emotional states. Like once you kind of educate yourself, you're like, oh, I understand why this person did this thing. So you're not going to have an emotional response. It's like, okay, well, you know, that person is bullying me because, you know, their dad beat them or something when they were young or whatever, you know. Whatever issues it is that they have. It's like, okay, well, this person's projecting it. It's like, I don't need to hold it against them. You know, they are unaware of these things that are happening, and this is just an emotional response to this. So I can respond accordingly. I'll go with knowledge. Okay.
Thank you so much. Sorry, this is my first interview. My hands are sweaty.
It's fine.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was enjoyable. I had fun.
Where can people find you? You can sign up for lessons.
You can.
Or are you full? Is your schedule
I'm
full?
just about full.
Okay, yeah, that's what the guy told me when we signed up.
You can find me on just about every social media.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.